I can remember the first time that I ever heard my song on the radio. It was probably '81, my first record.
After singing his heart out for over 40 years, George Strait is now facing the hardest moment of his life. His wife, Norma, the love of his life for more than 5 decades, has just received a heartbreaking diagnosis. And now, George might be stepping away from everything he loves, not because he wants to, but because he has to. What happened behind closed doors? And why is this goodbye hitting fans so hard? Stick around, because what we're about to share will change the way you see this country legend forever. How George and Norma's love story began. Before the awards, before the fame, before George Strait became a household name and country legend, he was just a young man with big dreams and a growing love for a girl he couldn't forget. It all started when they were both teens, living in the small town of Big Wells, Texas. George had seen Norma around, but never really thought much of it at first. They lived in the same town, but their paths didn't cross too often. And maybe, just maybe, George wasn't ready to dive into anything serious. Growing up on his father's 200-acre cattle ranch, George spent most of his weekends and summers working hard alongside his father, John Byron Strait Sr., a math teacher at a local junior high school. The ranch was his world, and he was content with that. There was always something peaceful about being out in the open fields, riding horses, and taking care of the cattle, and George found a real sense of pride in that lifestyle. But every now and then, life had a way of throwing surprises at you. One day, George finally gathered the courage to ask Norma out, and they went on their first date. He later described her as hot, completely taken by her beauty. But despite that first spark, they didn't see each other again for a while. Maybe it was the pull of ranch life that distracted him, or maybe he wasn't ready to commit yet. But whatever the reason, that initial meeting didn't turn into something more. Not right away, anyway. When George was still in elementary school, his parents divorced, which shook up the family dynamic. His sister, Pensy, moved in with their mother, while George and his brother, Buddy, stayed with their dad on the ranch. Even though George threw himself into working hard and growing up quickly, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't just the work or the ranch life that was pulling at him. It was the feeling that maybe he had left something unfinished. Months went by before he reached out to Norma again, and this time, things felt different. They started dating while still in high school, and it was clear that George was finally ready to invest in something real. But love wasn't the only thing on his mind. Along with the steady life of a cowboy, something else had started to stir inside of him. A deep passion for music. It wasn't always country music that filled George Strait's heart. When he was a teenager, he couldn't have been farther from the Texas country scene that would eventually make him famous. Instead, George found himself swept up in the rock and roll fever of the late 1960s. The British invasion was in full swing, and like many other teenagers at the time, George fell in love with bands like the Beatles. He even formed a local band, the Stoics, whose sound was strongly influenced by British rock stars. For a time, this was his world, the world of electric guitars and fast beats. What's surprising, though, is that despite being raised in Texas, a state that practically lives and breathes country music, George had no interest in it. He was so out of touch with the country genre that he didn't even listen to it on the radio. Instead, he preferred the Farmer's Report, a reflection of his ranching roots. His passion for music was all about rock and roll, and he followed it wherever it led. But, as life often does, something unexpected happened that would change everything for George. One day, he found himself at a live country music show. Something about the experience grabbed him. He couldn't stop thinking about it. That was the turning point. From that moment on, country music had a hold on him, and George began diving deep into it. He started listening to the legends like Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, Lefty Frizzell, and George Jones. The more he listened, the more he realized that country music was exactly where he wanted to be. With his newfound passion for country music, it seemed like George was ready to make his mark on the world. But before that happened, there was something important he had to do. After navigating his on and off relationship with Norma, the love of his life, George finally made a bold move. He and Norma eloped to Mexico and got married on December 4, 1971, right after high school. They had always been close, but now they were taking their love to a whole new level. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a statement that they were in it together, come what may. Later, they returned to Pearsall for a more traditional church ceremony. But the first one? That was the start of their forever. However, while their love story seemed like it was straight out of a romance novel, a tragedy was looming. Something was about to shake George and Norma to their core, and it would change everything. But for a while, they were living in bliss, starting their life together in peace. A new chapter. After tying the knot, George Strait and Norma's life together began a new chapter. The whirlwind of marriage brought with it love, excitement, and challenges. But they faced it all as a team. George's passion for music was still burning strong, but alongside that, he also felt a deep sense of duty to his country. In 1971, when the time came to serve, George didn't hesitate. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, stepping into the boots of an infantryman. He was stationed at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, a far cry from his Texas roots, but the perfect opportunity for George to prove his mettle. Once George was settled into his new life in Hawaii, Norma, ever the supportive wife, joined him. Together, they created a life far from the Texas ranch George had known, but one that still felt like home. On October 6, 1972, the couple's world grew even brighter with the arrival of their daughter, Jennifer. Holding their baby girl, George realized that his dreams had come true. He had the love of his life, a growing family, and a steady foundation. But there was still something missing, something George had always yearned for: music. Even as a soldier, George's heart was still in country music. When he heard about an Army-sponsored band called Rambling Country, he jumped at the chance to audition. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. He made it into the band, and they performed on and off bass, keeping George's love for music alive while he fulfilled his duty as a serviceman. Music was still a part of his life, but the dream of becoming a star was still far off. But like any journey worth taking, George's path was full of unexpected turns. In 1975, after leaving the Army as a corporal, George returned to Texas and enrolled at Texas State University to study agriculture. It made sense, after all. He had spent his whole life working on the family's cattle ranch. Music was still in his heart, but it seemed like it was time for a different chapter. George didn't major in music, even though it remained his true passion. While many would have settled into a more traditional path, George's story was far from over. One day, while on campus, George saw a flyer for a country band named Stony Ridge. They were looking for a new lead vocalist. Without hesitation, George tried out and quickly became the lead singer. He was no longer just part of a group. He was shaping the sound of the band. As their new frontman, George changed the name of the group to Ace in the Whole Band. The band performed all over Texas, mostly in small honky-tonks and bars, but they were beginning to make a name for themselves. They opened for famous acts like the Texas Playboys and Asleep at the Wheel. Their regional popularity grew, and soon enough, an independent label named D Records in Houston offered them the chance to record some singles. It was a big opportunity, and George was determined to make the most of it. He wrote the songs himself and poured his heart into each note. But as hard as they tried, the songs didn't catch on with the audience. The frustration started to build, but through it all, Norma stood by George, never wavering in her support. Even as the songs failed to gain traction, she reminded him of what they had: love, family, and an unwavering belief in his talent. George didn't give up on music entirely. To make ends meet, he continued to work on his father's cattle ranch during the day. While his passion for music hadn't waned, his dreams of becoming a successful musician seemed farther away than ever. But George wasn't one to back down, especially with Norma by his side. They kept pushing forward, and George continued to perform with Ace in the hole, pouring his heart into every show. Despite the setbacks, George's passion for music never diminished, and it was this determination that would eventually lead him to his big break. Through a connection from his band's performances, George met Irv Woolsey, a local manager who had worked with MCA Records. Woolsey began talking to his industry contacts about George's talent. Though the response was mostly positive, there was one major problem. No one could figure out how George's music would appeal to the wider country market. His sound was different. It was rooted in traditional country, but with a fresh twist. The record industry just wasn't sure where to place him. George faced rejection after rejection, but instead of quitting, he pushed harder. He traveled to Nashville, the heart of country music, in search of a record deal. But despite his best efforts, nothing came through. He was turned down by label after label, leaving him discouraged and questioning his future. As the rejections piled up, George began to think about providing for his family in a different way. Music wasn't working out, so perhaps it was time to put his dreams on hold. During this period of frustration, George was offered a job designing cattle pens for a ranch. It wasn't the glamorous career he had dreamed of, but it was steady work, and it would help take care of his family. George told his band that he was quitting music, and for a brief moment, it seemed like his dreams were slipping away. Norma, however, refused to let him give up. She knew that George wasn't passionate about cattle pens, and she wasn't about to let him abandon his music. Norma sat George down for a heart-to-heart talk, urging him to give music just one more year. She told him that she believed in him, that they both had sacrificed too much for him to give up now. George didn't want to break her heart. He loved her too much to let her down. So, he agreed to give it one more shot. It was a good decision, one that would change their lives forever. In 1981, George's big break finally came when MCA Records signed him to a recording contract. There was a catch, though. He had only one chance to prove himself. If his first single did well, they'd consider making an album. That one chance was all George needed. With his band backing him up, George released Unwound as his first single. The song was a massive hit, reaching number 6 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. That success led to his first album, Strait Country, which cemented his place as the hottest new talent in country music. George's sound was a refreshing return to traditional country, and it resonated with listeners. His authentic cowboy image, paired with his new traditional sound, quickly made him a star. In 1982, he followed up with his first #1 hit, Fool-Hearted Memory, and his career just kept rising. But George's success didn't stop there. In 1983, he replaced Eddie Rabbitt as the headliner for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, marking yet another milestone in his career. It seemed like everything George touched turned to gold, and with each passing year, he earned more accolades, more recognition, and more love from his fans. Through all of this, Norma remained his steady rock. She chose to give up her own career to raise their children, providing George with the support he needed to pursue his dreams. Together, they built a life that was both successful and full of love, a love that has lasted through it all. Before diving into the heartbreaking challenges George Strait and his wife Norma have faced in recent years, it's important to take a moment and appreciate the remarkable love story they've shared for over 5 decades. For many fans, George's private life is something of a mystery. He's known for being reserved and keeping details about his family close to his heart. But every so often, he gives us a glimpse of his appreciation for Norma. In 2020, for example, George shared a heartfelt Valentine's Day post on Instagram, featuring a beautiful photo of him and Norma. In his caption, he expressed his deep gratitude for her love and dedication, offering his fans a rare but special look into their bond. Norma, although someone who tends to stay out of the public eye, has been by George's side through countless milestones, including some of the most important moments in his career. One of the standout moments was in 1989 when George won the prestigious Entertainer of the Year award at the CMA Awards. Norma was right there beside him, offering her support as he accepted the honor. While she's not one to seek the spotlight, Norma made a rare public appearance in 2019. She appeared in the music video for George's song Código, which was all about good times and celebration. The video, shot in Mexico, showed Norma dancing and laughing with friends, sharing joyful moments with George in a lively and carefree setting. It was a glimpse into their personal life, showing the deep bond they share, not just as partners but as true companions in every sense of the word. Their love story has taken them to some incredible places, both in their personal lives and professional careers. In 2021, George shared a throwback photo marking President's Day, reflecting on a moment when he and Norma met former President George H.W. Bush at the White House. This photo served as a reminder of just how far George's career has taken him, from a country music star to rubbing shoulders with the President of the United States. But perhaps the most touching milestone came in December of 2021, when George and Norma celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, a rare and impressive achievement in the entertainment industry. To mark this special occasion, George performed "I Cross My Heart," a song that perfectly encapsulates the love they've shared over the years, at a concert in Las Vegas. It was an emotional moment for both of them, a chance for George to serenade his wife in front of thousands of fans. In his speech, he shared their love story with the audience, recalling how they first met as teenagers and how they eventually eloped to Mexico, cementing their lifelong bond. Their journey together has been nothing short of extraordinary, marked by both quiet moments of love and public celebrations of their enduring connection. But like all relationships, theirs has faced challenges, and the toughest one of all is something they never expected: a tragic loss that changed everything. Sometimes, life has a way of throwing unimaginable pain at the people who seem to have everything. And for George and Norma Strait, tragedy struck in a way they never saw coming. In 1986, their world was shattered forever. At the time, their daughter Jennifer was just 13 years old, full of life and surrounded by friends. She was growing up, finding her own independence and starting to spread her wings. George and Norma, like any parents, kept an eye on who she spent her time with and were generally happy with the people she surrounded herself with. So, when Jennifer asked to go out one night, they didn't hesitate to say yes. She was a teenager now, and they thought she was responsible enough to enjoy a little freedom. That fateful night in 1986 would be the last time George and Norma would ever see their daughter alive. Jennifer was riding in the front seat of the car, and unfortunately, she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. The driver, a young man named Gregory Wilson Allen, was speeding as he approached a turn. He lost control of the vehicle, and it flipped. Because Jennifer wasn't properly buckled in, she was partially ejected from the car when it overturned. The impact of the car landing on its side was fatal, crushing Jennifer instantly. The driver was charged with vehicular homicide, but nothing could undo the damage. Jennifer was gone. The pain of losing a child is something no parent should ever have to face, and for George and Norma, this heartbreak was overwhelming. In the aftermath, they were both left to grapple with the immense sorrow that seemed to consume their every waking moment. Norma was especially devastated. The grief she felt was compounded by guilt. As a mother, she questioned herself and wondered if she could have done something differently, anything to prevent the tragedy. Meanwhile, George found himself pulling away from the public eye. He decided to step back from interviews and avoid anything that would force him to publicly discuss his daughter's death. The loss was just too much to bear. Amid their sorrow, Norma knew she had to do something meaningful to channel her grief. In the same year, she and George co-founded the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation, named in their daughter's honor. The foundation's mission was to help prevent other families from experiencing the same pain they were going through. It was their way of turning their heartbreak into something that could help others, focusing on providing support for children in need. Though nothing could fill the hole left by Jennifer's death, Norma threw herself into the foundation's work, finding purpose in giving back. At the time, their son Bubba, who was only 5 years old, also needed his parents. While Norma took on the task of managing the foundation, George continued to perform and keep his career moving forward, but his heart was heavy. The loss of Jennifer, coupled with the pressure of being a public figure, made everything feel like a blur. But somehow, George carried on, using his music as a way to process the grief and stay connected to the world outside his personal tragedy. It wouldn't be the last time George and Norma would face personal loss. In April of 2009, George's older brother, John Byron "Buddy" Strait, passed away at the age of 58. Another devastating blow. This second loss was a painful reminder of just how fragile life could be, reinforcing the importance of family and the fleeting nature of time. But even in the face of sorrow, George chose to channel his grief into his music, as he had done after Jennifer's death. Instead of retreating further into the shadows, he pushed forward, reaching even greater heights in his career. Between 1986 and 1989, George experienced an unparalleled run of success, with 11 straight #1 hits. His music resonated with fans across the world, and soon he broke records previously held by country music legends like Conway Twitty. Not only did George become the artist with the most #1 hits on Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart, but he also became the most nominated artist at the Country Music Awards and the Academy of Country Music Awards. His dominance in the country music scene was undeniable, and it seemed like there was no limit to how far his career would go. By 1989, George had won the coveted Country Music Association (CMA) Entertainer of the Year Award, a title he would take home again in 1990. He continued his winning streak by claiming the ACM Entertainer of the Year Award in 1990, and again in 2014. Over the years, George had amassed an impressive collection of awards, solidifying his place as one of country music's greatest icons. But it wasn't just the awards that marked his success. His tours were legendary, drawing massive crowds and selling out stadiums. In June of 2014, George performed at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, where his The Cowboy Rides Away tour set a record with a crowd of over 100,000 people. However, this wouldn't be the largest audience he would perform for. In 2024, he set the record for the largest ticketed concert for a single act in U.S. history, with more than 110,000 people in attendance at Kyle Field in College Station, Texas. Despite these milestones, nothing could ever overshadow the loss George and Norma still carried with them: the loss of their daughter Jennifer. Though they rarely spoke of it, the grief remained a quiet undercurrent in their lives. The one time they did open up about their sorrow was a moment of extraordinary strength. Instead of focusing solely on their pain, they expressed gratitude for the 13 years they had with Jennifer, a rare but powerful moment of closure. It revealed the strength of character that both George and Norma possess, a testament to their resilience in the face of unimaginable heartache. But life had one more unexpected twist for George Strait and his fans. A goodbye no one saw coming. George Strait might be saying a heartbreaking goodbye, and fans aren't ready. For more than 40 years, George Strait has been a living legend in country music. His voice, his songs, and his quiet charm have made him one of the most beloved artists in America. But now, something has changed, and fans are starting to worry that this might really be the end of the road. Lately, the man who's always had a song in his heart seems to have something heavier weighing on his shoulders. Behind the spotlight and the steady smile, George has been facing something deeply personal and painful. Rumor has it that his wife, Norma, who has been by his side for over 50 years, is battling a serious illness. Though George hasn't made any public statements, those closest to him say he's thinking about stepping back from everything: music, shows, travel, not because he wants to, but because he has to. Norma isn't just George's wife. She's the one he fell in love with as a teenager, the one who stuck with him before the fame, during the early days of struggling gigs, and through every single high and low of his career. So if she's in trouble, it makes sense that George would want to be nowhere else but by her side. Even now, George still enjoys the good life he's built through years of dedication. When he travels to Las Vegas for a performance, he skips the chaos of commercial airports. Instead, he takes a private jet straight from Texas and checks into the mansion, a hidden luxury retreat beside the MGM Grand that only the richest and most famous ever get to see. But even with all the comforts and success, his heart remains grounded, especially when it comes to family. Throughout his career, George was never about chasing trends or wild collaborations. He stayed true to his roots. That cowboy hat? It wasn't just a style, it was a symbol. Back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when country music was changing fast, George stood firm and reminded everyone what real country sounded like. And artists took notice. Many followed his lead, trying to capture that old-school sound he kept alive. When you look at the numbers, it's clear just how much he's done. Over 120 million records sold, 33 platinum albums, 13 more that went multi-platinum, 38 gold ones. These aren't just achievements, they're proof that George Strait doesn't just sing songs. He leaves a mark. And even though the years have passed, George hasn't slowed down much. He spends more time outdoors now, fishing or hitting the golf course, enjoying life at a slower, quieter pace. He loves escaping to warm places like Mexico or the Bahamas, where the sand is soft, the water is blue, and the crowds don't follow him around. But George isn't just about music and vacations. He's also got a big heart. Since 2010, he's been the face of the Wrangler National Patriot Program, a cause close to his heart that helps raise support for veterans and their families. For George, it's more than a title. He's taken it seriously, appearing at events and spreading the word in every way he can. He's even shown up in ads for the Tractor Supply Company, proving that his influence reaches far beyond the stage. Back in September of 2012, George made a surprising announcement. He said he was retiring from the road, not from music, but from touring. He called it the Cowboy Rides Away Tour, and fans knew they had to catch him before he disappeared from the spotlight. The farewell tour kicked off in January of 2013 in Lubbock, Texas. It was split into 2 parts, with 21 shows in the first year and 26 more in the next. He wasn't alone either. Martina McBride joined him for the first leg, while the second half featured stars like Jason Aldean, Eric Church, Miranda Lambert, Vince Gill, and Tim McGraw. The final show? That was something else. On June 7, 2014, over 104,000 people packed into AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. That night, George didn't just break a record, he crushed it. It became the biggest single-act concert in U.S. history at the time. $18 million in ticket sales. A sea of cowboy hats and teary-eyed fans saying goodbye. To keep the memory alive, a live album was released that September. Then, in November, a special DVD and CD edition came out, including 28 songs and behind-the-scenes footage. Country Music Television even aired a special about the event, letting fans relive it one more time. But even after saying goodbye to the road, George didn't stop creating. In 2015, he released Cold Beer Conversation. It didn't score a top 10 hit, which was a first for him, but fans still loved it. He wasn't chasing chart success anymore. He was singing from the heart. Then, just when everyone thought he'd done it all, George made history again. In June of 2024, he played a concert at Kyle Field at Texas A&M University in College Station. The crowd? A jaw-dropping 110,955 fans. He broke the record he had already set, proving once again that the world still isn't ready to let George Strait go. But now, as whispers grow louder about Norma's health, fans are left wondering, will George step away for good? And if he does, can anyone truly fill the boots he'll leave behind? No matter what happens next, one thing is certain. George Strait has already given more than enough. Music, love, and loyalty. Not just to his fans, but to his family too. And if this is the goodbye, then it's the kind fans will never forget. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. While you're still here, you should check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You'll absolutely be mind blown.